Welcome to Short and to the Point, a podcast from the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Here's your host, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Short and to the Point here on Awful Announcing and the Comeback. Jessica Kleinschmidt here. Another fun episode ahead of us. I've known Cody Decker, for 10 years now. And I knew him. I met him during his time playing in the minor league organizations from the Diamondbacks and the Padres. And I was covering the Reno Aces at the time. So I saw him quite a bit playing in the PCL. Very fun and entertaining person. And you knew that right off the bat. Played in the minors for 11 years, but definitely had a knack for the media and being a personality. So now he's working in sports media with a lot of, platforms, MLB Network. And I think he's done FS1 and Stadium. And he's the co-host with Michelle Beadle on Beadle and Decker on Mad Dog Sports Radio on Sirius XM. And I hope you enjoyed this interview because you can definitely tell he has the gift of gab and he's seen a lot. He knows the game of baseball inside and out, and he learns from his co-host, Michelle Beadle. He gets to work with some pretty awesome people as well. And then, of course, I see if the door is still open for a possible coaching career in his future. So here's my chat with Cody Decker. Well, welcome back to Short and to the Point. And I'm really excited for Cody Decker to be joining us today. First time ever on the show, but we've known each other for a long time. I just appreciate you being here, Cody.
I appreciate you appreciating me being here.
Well, on that note, it's appreciated of the appreciation. Before we get into your actual minor league career, which is where you and I met, I want to talk to you about, retiring and then heading into sports media. What was that transition like? Were there difficulties there? Was it came as advertised, or what was that approach like?
Oh, definitely difficulties. But I mean, I'm a unique case in fairness. I mean, not a whole lot of people go from being like a real life version of Crash Davis into, a media career. And I was one of the few that were lucky enough to kind of get that opportunity. And part of that was opportunities that I kind of accidentally set up for myself when I was playing, opportunities that were kind of set up for me while I was playing, and things that I did beforehand. Like I grew up part of a theater company in Santa Monica. So I was always in theater along with playing baseball. And I actually had like a decision to make at 18 years old, whether or not I was going to play baseball or go fully into acting, which I'm really glad I played baseball because I freely was aware that I was a really good looking 18-year-old kid, but I knew in 10 years that was not going to be the same face. And clearly at 20 years later, not the same face. So I'm very glad that worked out.
That's why you host a radio show,
which is why I'm on the radio now. Yes. I'm barely on TV now, except for MLB Network, Fox, and Stadium for some reason. Yeah. But the whole thing was I had offers when I was playing. It was almost like companies were trying to get me to retire and stop playing baseball. I'll never forget it. I got a phone call after getting called up by the Padres. And the day the season ended, I got a phone call from the front office saying, would you have any interest in retiring and taking over our pregame and postgame show? To which I'm like, I just got to the big leagues. It took me 7 years to get to the big leagues. And I had to hit like 200 home runs to get to the big leagues. And now now you don't want me here and you just want me to talk about it. And kind of looking back, I probably should have said yes, because I just toiled away in AAA for like another 5 years. But I was a very unique and lucky case. I was kind of always around the media during the off seasons. I would work at a radio station in LA called 100.3 The Sound, which no longer exists. I worked at KLOS when I was at college for Mark and Brian, and radio was always kind of part of my thing. Media was always part of my thing. And obviously, you already kind of alluded to it, the YouTube channel that I had when I played. Nowadays, every organization would kill probably to have me, because the peeling back the curtain is a wonderful thing that we get to see nowadays in sports. This was not the same world that we were living in 2011, 2012, 2013. It was heavily frowned upon that I had that YouTube channel. The Padres approved it and then kind of backtracked on that and somehow got mad about it. And then other old school baseball people around you shouldn't be doing that in the clubhouse, to which I'm like, you guys are so old and boring, and baseball's old and boring. Can we, for the love of God, pretend that youthful people are in this game? And now they finally do. They decided that right after I retired.
And talk to me a little bit about that, because at the beginning you were kind of the infancy of baseball media, maybe not even the infancy, but it wasn't even, there's no inception quite yet.
Mhm.
And so being able to create all these great YouTube videos and kind of showing the behind the scenes, but there's also skits and those types of things. What gave you the courage to do all of that? Was it the acting background?
It's probably the acting background.
Mhm.
I was always, growing up, one in theater, also doing like a lot of improv, which by the way is always terrible. My improv was probably the worst thing in the world. And
Why is that?
because all improv is actually the worst thing in the world. And
Mhm.
I'm not a comedian. I'm just a guy that thinks he's funny enough to do things. And occasionally I'm right and often I'm wrong. The sketches were just old comedy bits that we would put together. I used to have a writing partner. We used to write together, and I would throw him an idea that I'm working on, and he would throw ideas back at me, and then I would just make a YouTube video out of it if I was putting together, like, with cell phones.
Mhm.
I played a lot of pranks all the time because I loved playing pranks. The guys loved pranking me right back, and it was a thing to keep that really long season feeling moderately shorter. Obviously the Jeff Rancour pranks, but things of like, I had a teammate named Dean Anna that I used to terrorize. I remember one time I removed his locker from the locker room and I put it on the mound of the field, and
Routine. Yeah.
I set up his whole locker exactly the same way it was set up before. He just had to figure out how to remove his locker from the field. I had another teammate, Cameron Monger. We had a 3-month-long prank war that got very intense, where he would damage, like, I had a little moped. He would damage my moped, and I would saran wrap his car, and then I would hide things in his like air vents, like glitter, and turn his air vents all the way up. So when he turned on his car, it was an explosion of glitter on him. And I would film these things and play them for the team. It was things like that. It was just things to kind of pass the time, because I know people look at athletes and think, well, you should just be focused on your job nonstop. You should be in the batting cage nonstop. I got to the field every day at noon. I left every day at midnight. I did all my work as much as humanly possible, and there's an outrageous amount of downtime. And if I had spent my entire baseball career thinking about nothing but baseball,
Mm.
I would have hated baseball more than I at times already did, because baseball season, 162, and even the minors, when you're playing around 142 to 150, that is a grueling long season. And if you are, in the minor leagues, it's very easy for every minor league team in August to hate each other. It's
Mhm.
kind of upon you, the players and the staff, to figure out a way to make it entertaining, to make it not a hostile environment. Because the thing about the minor leagues is everybody in that room feels like they're getting screwed in some way. They're not necessarily getting screwed. It's just an unfortunate aspect of the business. Only so many guys can be in the big leagues. There are 26 spots up there, and those guys aren't giving up those jobs. So felt like I was pressed against a glass ceiling for a lot of years. So what else to do other than to figure out ways to entertain myself?
And when did you start noticing, like, since you were removed from it, that minor league or really baseball was embracing the media and like those little things where the players were part of the content?
I think it kind of started right around the end. I think about 2018, 2019. I think people were starting to embrace these things a little bit more, because I think they saw an opportunity to figure out to make more money off of it, quite
Mhm.
frankly. Major League Baseball, to me, has always been scared of peeling back the curtain. I've never been entirely certain why. Whether it's the old schoolness of baseball, because baseball is more married to its record books than any other sport. It's just the way it is. I don't know what it is. Baseball is just old stuffy dudes who don't want to move forward. That's why I applaud Rob Manfred. I applaud Major League Baseball, what they've done these last 7 years. Rob Manfred was maligned by everyone for what seemed like his first 7 years as the commissioner of the game. For the last 3 years, this guy's been, for lack of a better phrase, knocking it out of the park. Every rule change has benefited the game. Every aspect that's taking place ever since the last CBA, it seems like Rob Manfred has just been on good guy duty ever since. And hell, he's sold me. It's working.
And I agree with you too, but why don't other people agree with what Manfred is doing?
I think they hold on to the old things, like calling the commissioner's trophy a piece of metal. I think that
Mhm.
he has made sincerely bad missteps along the way, specifically each CBA. There's an old playbook that the owners love to run, and it's figuring out a way, how do we make our players seem like the greediest human beings in the world? They successfully do it every single time. You get a strike that happens, well, these greedy players. Oh, we got a lockout that's happening. Oh, well, these greedy players. Yet it's always the owners that don't open up their books, and they're making billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. So I always argue with fans. I'm like, why are you supporting the ownership and MLB side when they're making all the money and they're not disclosing the money? And it always confused me. And it's because it's just a playbook that they run every time a CBA comes up. This last CBA, I think the owners accidentally, without their knowledge, kind of showed their ass a little bit, because at this point, we all kind of know that there are billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, and you don't get to say greedy players forever. And I think that's how the players were able to gain back so much momentum. And I think Rob Manfred, which again, Rob Manfred's job, unfortunately, because the commissioner, even though the job on paper is to safeguard the game, even though I think Rob Manfred's been doing a very good job of that as of late, at the end of the day, you're a union head chief for the owners. That's what the job really is. And he's making the owners a lot of money. And now the players are making a lot of money, and baseball's making a lot of money. At the end of the day, if everybody's profitable, then Rob Manfred's doing one hell of a job. And baseball right now is a better viewing product than it's been my entire life. The World Baseball Classic, that last classic, was a resounding success. That's Rob Manfred. The National League DH is a resounding success. That's Rob Manfred. The pitch clock is a resounding success. Rob Manfred. The guy deserves his flowers. I get what everybody's saying on the past things, but you cannot deny that he's not crushing it as of late.
And I mean, you could easily say that now because you're a member of the media. Did you have that mentality when you were a player?
I think I was in a different spot when I was a player because of where I was positioned, because I was positioned in a spot that I didn't find the Players Association to be on my side either. Tony Clark told me to my face how little I mattered to him and the Players Association. I asked him flat out one day when we were talking about, I was with the Royals in 2016, and we have our, obligatory meeting where Tony Clark tells the whole group. And of course, this was the World Series champion Royals at the time. So it was a big thing that he was in the room talking to all the guys. He's talking to Moustakas, talking to Hosmer and the whole group. And I'll never forget, he's like talking about, see outside, you guys are a World Series winning team. And outside, as you can see, they have that banner out there with all the things they want you to sign. You guys shouldn't be signing that without getting compensated. And he was going on and on about compensation for players doing this and that. And I just kept looking, thinking like, none of this matters. Eric Hosmer's fine. Mike Moustakas is fine. I don't know why the Players Association is so worried about guys making over $100 million. They need to be worried about me, the guy that's not making $100 million, whose contract isn't guaranteed. So I flat out asked him why we're not focusing on players that actually need the Players Association's help. And I'll never forget his answer. It was the most insulting thing ever said to my face without his knowledge. He just looks at me, he's like, well, Deck, you got to understand, man, you were never supposed to make it. That was his direct quote to my very easily answerable question. And if that's where his mind went, that just made me go like, well, it sounds like the Players Association is just as broken as Major League Baseball itself. So I don't exactly think that they're the good guys either.
And then that's kind of hard because, I mean, when you are watching it from afar and you see that it's a Players Association versus the owners versus, Manfred being the voice of the owners, you have Tony Clark. Do you think we're bridging the gap a little bit more, or do you think it's still very far apart?
I think we'll find out of the next CBA that we are probably more farther apart than we are feeling at the moment. And that's just what happens when you have billions upon billions upon billions of dollars at stake. And I truly understand the plight of both sides. I understand Tony Clark's plight in every situation he's in. And I get Rob Manfred's as well. It's tricky. You always hope cooler heads prevail. And thank God cooler heads eventually prevailed. But this was a long one, this last CBA. And the Players Association gained a lot of ground in the last CBA. It makes me worry about how much ground they're going to have to give up in the next one.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I want to talk a little bit about your minor league career, 11 years as a professional baseball player. And when you say that out loud, that sounds amazing, right? People don't know how the minors actually is. And you compare yourself to Crash Davis, all of that. Why not give up during an 11-year career? You got a cup of coffee in the majors. It was a small cup of coffee too. So when it comes to that, why did you keep going?
They paid me. I needed a job.
And you said you were a glutton for punishment too.
Yeah, no. Trust me. Clearly, I just don't like me that much. And I thought of what, be really cool. I would love to be in Reno, Nevada and live in my car one more season. And that's what I did. it's just, I loved playing the game. I when you're held up against that standard and you're seeing the guys that get called up that are making the money that aren't necessarily better than you. And it's just one of those things. I was told flat out when I got drafted in the 22nd round of UCLA, you're going to have to play out of your mind to just not be fired at all times, because they paid me after taxes $643.63.
Yeah.
There's no financial investment to keep me there. I had to play out of my mind. So my first year, I had a monster year. My second year, monster year. Third year, monster year. I don't think I had a bad season until, a legitimate bad season until 2016, when I was traded, released, sat at home for a full month and a half, had to take a double-A deal with the Red Sox, and I finished the year hitting like 240 on the season with like 19 home runs and like 70 RBIs. Not terrible on paper, but I knew it was a bad year. I felt it. I walked away from it, and I truly considered retiring in 2016. I ended up signing with the Mets, had a good, solid year with them, played 2 seasons with the Diamondbacks. And the reason I came back for that last year with the Diamondbacks is I was thinking about just shutting it down in 18. I loved that front office, and they were extremely good to me. They were overly honest with me. The goal for them towards the end of my career, to really answer your question, why come back after my small cup of coffee where I didn't even play when I was in the big leagues? The goal wasn't necessarily for me to get back to the big leagues. The goal from 2015 on was to get to Japan. And the best way for me to get to Japan was to sign a AAA deal with a team, play well, get enough playing time, and play well enough for them to be able to sell me to a team in Japan or Korea. Unfortunately for me, the playing time just wasn't there for me anymore. They had prospects that needed to play. So I go over to the Mets. They had that goal and hope to sell me to Japan or Korea. But unfortunately, I had a top prospect named Dom Smith at AAA. Dom's got to play. I totally understand that. It makes all the sense in the world. I'll get my spots when I can. And I did. And unfortunately, it wasn't enough to get signed over there. I go over to the Diamondbacks. Hey, man, we got Christian Walker. He's going to play. Totally get that. Hopefully he can find other spots. I played a lot of left field those years, played a lot, caught a little bit, played a little bit of right field. But unfortunately, it wasn't the amount of at-bats that it would get the eyes of a KBO or a Japan. So unfortunately, I never got to live that dream of playing. I would have loved to have been a Yomiuri Giant or a Doosan Bear, but unfortunately, it didn't happen for me.
And it was it Mr. 3000 that you were watching and you kind of wanted to embrace it? What was so special about wanting to play overseas?
So I grew up training with Reggie Smith, and as a kid, Reggie Smith was the hitting coach for the Dodgers. He ran this clinic called Baseball Development, BDC, Baseball Development Centers. And then it turned into Reggie Smith Baseball Development Centers. And then it just I became one of Reggie's pupils, ended up working for him, training players with him, training athletes during the offseason. I was there every day when the movie 61 was getting ready to be shot. And I was sitting there taking ground balls with Barry Pepper and sitting there in the batting cage with Thomas Jane while they're learning how to swing the bat. It was a wild time as a little kid doing that. And the thing about Reggie was he always had this influx of Japanese players that would come in, and I would be a part of this exchange program kind of where I'd play against this Japanese talent that would come in, to the point where Reggie would tell me these stories of him playing in the 80s after he retired in the States and playing for the Yomiuri Giants. He would give me details. And then I met Brad Leslie, the animal, who was so famous over there in Japan. And obviously, as a little kid, one of my favorite baseball movies, not my favorite baseball movie, my second favorite baseball movie, Mr. Baseball, starring Tom Selleck, where he goes over there and plays for the Chunichi Dragons. I wanted to be Jack Elliott, man. There was something about Japan that seemed so cool. And I'm not going to lie to you, they're better at baseball than we are, as evidenced by multiple World Baseball Classic victories.
Dan Straley is a good friend of mine, and he says playing in front of a Korean or a Japanese crowd is night and day sometimes compared to playing in the bigs.
I'll tell you right now, I only got to play a couple of games in the Tokyo Dome in the World Baseball Classic, but one of those games was against Japan in the Tokyo Dome. To this day, I've never been a part of a louder experience in my life. And I've seen Kiss in the front row. This was louder.
Amazing. I love that. And I think don't they throw like chicken? Don't they have they throw chicken at you, don't they?
I didn't get hit with a chicken, but I would have been okay with it.
Yeah, because I heard that. I don't know who told me that. And everybody was looking at me like, Jessica would love that, because I do love some fried chicken. If I'm getting fried chicken thrown at me, like, sign me up the day before yesterday.
If you told me that was a potential case of assault for me, I will move to Japan.
I say maybe I should have told you that. Maybe we would have worked a little bit harder. And I wanted to talk about the last game that you played. And it was important for me because, or I'm going to be selfish for a second. Like, I got my start with the Reno Aces, and then you were back with the Aces. It's how you and I met. And for you to have this walk-off homer, was it Ryan Radke on the call too?
Yes, it was. Yeah. And
so
man, what a call.
What a beautiful man, first and foremost. Yeah. And so that was part of it. And to know that he knew you were retiring. Johnny Gomes knew you were retiring. So he was an outfield instructor.
Outfielder coordinator.
Yeah. And nobody talked about it, which was really cool as far as it being public. So how did that add to the emotions of, you kind of joked, I'm just going to hit a walk-off, and to know that that was it, like there were so many elements to that story.
That night was very wild. So the full story behind that whole season. So there's a lot more to it than just that night. As I mentioned, it was my second year with the Diamondbacks at that point, and they were honest with me that, listen, we're going to pay you this much monthly. We're going to guarantee it. We just want you to be here. We'll do everything we can to sell you to Japan, but you know who we have in the minor league system, because they did have some top prospects. Clearly, look at what the Diamondbacks are now.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating, but I was so appreciative of just the honesty. I have no problem with that answer as long as it's the truth. And in the fact that we were open about it, I had to go on the phantom IL a couple of times.
Like an ankle injury?
Oh yeah, ankle sprain is what I had. Oh, that was brutal. And when you're not injured and you're very capable, and what is on the field is not necessarily better than you, it's just what is more important than you, or being deemed more important than you. It's a tough pill to swallow. But at that point, I was 32 years old and very much understood what the business was. I had many opportunities to. Hell, the Diamondbacks offered me to be a manager multiple times. The Padres trying to get me to be a manager, but I very much wanted to be in the media side, because that's where I really thought my future was. And I just I had no interest in starting my minor league career all over again.
Yeah.
But the thing about it was, as the season was progressing, I got an offer to do a new radio and TV show that I couldn't turn down. And and the Diamondback, they wanted to fly me to Boston. And I came to the Diamondbacks and said, hey, listen, can I take a day off and fly to Boston? And I wasn't on the IL at the time. And it was shocking that they said, how quickly can you be back?
Oh, I love that.
And I just paused. I'm like, I could be back and miss one game. He's like, if you promise us you're missing a game, we will let you do it. I said, thank you. And I did it. Good news. That game rained out. No one even knew I was gone. Let's go. No one even knew. It was fantastic. But it was just a wild time. And I had the offer and I was mulling it over. And obviously it was an emotional time for me, because at that point I was so married to the game. And it's so hard saying goodbye to the game, especially when the jersey's not being taken from me. In fact, when I called the Diamondbacks to let them know I was going to retire in a couple of weeks, they were like, man, would you reconsider? And I said, what?
Wow.
Why? And they were like, well, I'm like, Cody, I'm like, no. Answer this question. Are you calling me up in September? Because if you're calling me up in September, I will reconsider. And they're like, well, we can't answer that. We don't know. I'm like, no. Guys, I have a steadfast offer of something that will be my job for the next 3 years. It's a 3-year deal. And I'm like, if you're telling me I'm going to the big leagues in September, I'll do it. I'll definitely turn down the offer. They're like, well, we don't think we're going to call you up. So, but we don't want to lose you. And I'm like, well, I appreciate that. But if like, well, do you want us to do anything? So no, I would just like to play when it's reasonable that I'm playing, and you don't need to change anything. So they called me and they knew what my last game was. Like, hey, Cody, you actually are going to play in this game. All cool? I said, yeah, cool. Can't wait. And at the time I hadn't played in weeks. I hadn't seen a live arm in what felt like, I think 2 weeks at that time. And, as you've seen with the bye in Major League playoffs, missing 5 days is a very, very long amount of time to not see live pitching, let alone 2 weeks. So I get in there, and my first 3 at bats, I go for 3 with 3 Ks. And I'm just sitting there after my 3rd K going to the dugout. I'm like, God, I can't wait to retire. I cannot wait for this hell to be over.
Yeah.
And I remember we were down by 1 in the 8th, and I came up to the plate with bases loaded, and my timing's off. But I made a diving catch earlier in the game, so I was happy about that. And I was up with bases loaded, and I hit a line drive single to the left to tie the game. We take the lead. And I've thought about it. I'm like, that's a good way to go out. Bases loaded, 2-strike, single to left to tie the ball game that we're going to win. Good end of the career. And we had a guy named Jimmy Sherfy, who was a phenomenal relief pitcher. And
great interview too. He's very funny.
Love me some Jimmy Sherfy.
Yeah.
Jimmy does not make a habit of blowing saves, to say the least. And this just happened to be one of those days where Jimmy blew a save. Never happens, but all of a sudden he chose this night to blow a save.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in left field just pissed. I just want to win my last game. And I look at the scoreboard, because as you know, in Reno, they keep the scoreboards up where they have both lineups up at all times. And I look where we are in the lineup. I'm like, whatever, I'm up third this inning. We'll get a guy on. I'll just hit a walk-off. And at that point, I didn't even consider that this was my last game anymore. At this point, I just want to win this game. I'm angry that we're no longer winning the game. And part of it was selfish, because I'm like, damn it, I hit a game-tying RBI that now is no longer the game-tying RBI.
Right.
So selfishly, I'm being kind of a jerk as well while I'm yelling this verbally out loud in left field. No one could hear me, obviously. I said it out loud. I come in the batter's box, and we do have a runner on base, and it's the bottom of the 9th inning, and they have their closer in, and I faced him before. He's a flamethrower, sits 97, 90 to 101. And all I'm thinking is, like, just get on time for the fastball, dude. Just get on time for the fastball. If he throws you 3 truly nasty sliders, he deserved to get me out. I'll swing through every one of them. I don't care, but he is not getting one of these damn 98 to 99 mile per hour fastballs by me. First pitch fastball, I foul it back. And I literally screamed at myself, get on time to the fastball. God, you're terrible at this. Catcher heard me. Everyone heard. I get back in the box just pissed off. I'm shocked that a fastball came again.
Wow.
97, and I was more than on time, ready for it. Hammered it to left center field, and I took off because I'm Jewish, and when I'm Jewish, I have ancestors in the back of my head that are always criticizing me. It's just what happens. So, I could never pimp a home run. 1, I have no swag, and 2, generations of Jewish ancestors yelling at me, oh, look at you thinking so good about himself. No. I take off, because what if it hits a bird and lands? I'm not going to be the one that hits a single in that situation because of some pure chaos that could have taken place. So I took off, and once I saw the ball go way out, I didn't slow down. My sprint just continued. I was so fired up, and our dugout was down there, and I still hadn't registered to me that this is my last
you
moment.
With them running out and everything. Like,
just didn't even, at no point has it crossed my mind. I'm just sprinting around the bases, fired up that we got the win. I throw my helmet, join all the guys, and I literally get there, and guys are in tears. Friends of mine that I played with for years. I remember, God, who was it that I hugged for a really long time? I'm so sorry I'm forgetting his name right now. He was a catcher for the Blue Jays. He actually works on this Blue Jays commentator now, and he's phenomenal at it. Catcher. It'll come to me. I'm so mad at myself for immediately not saying his name out loud. But it was, hugged him for a while, and even one of the players from the other team walked by. He's like, this is a bit much. And one of the guys like, Deck's retiring tonight. Like, this has been planned. Everyone knew. My teammates knew. Radke knew. Diamondbacks knew. Johnny Gomes knew. And no one said a word. No one said a word about it, because there was a plan about me retiring. I was flying to El Paso the next day to fly where the AAA All-Star game was, and they had a little ceremony for me to retire there. It was really nice. It was a very sweet thing to do, which is not something a lot of guys that spend most of their career stuck in AAA get to say they got to be a part of. But I'll never forget it. It didn't hit me. I didn't realize what was happening until I got to the dugout, where, because I'm putting my bat in the bat rack, and I always take my elbow guard off, put my batting gloves tightly in the elbow guard, put it in the helmet, and I put my helmet in the helmet rack like I always do. And I'll never forget it. Put the helmet in the helmet rack, and that's when I paused. Like, all of a sudden my hand was glued to the helmet rack. I'm like, oh my God, this is the last time I'm ever putting a helmet in a helmet rack. And I looked to my right, and Johnny Gomes, when I say Johnny Gomes is next to me, he's like right here. He's just like next to me right here. And I just turned like, and I'm like, Johnny, I'm retiring tonight. And he goes like, I know. This is awesome. He grabbed my bat, runs away. He puts it in a big old sleeve for me. Is that bat never touches a baseball ever again. It's on my mom's wall. What can I say? It was wild. And I got in, and here's the thing. I was grabbing my stuff to go in the clubhouse, but now I'm getting emotional. It's all hitting me all at once. And I didn't realize what was happening. I didn't realize the crowd was still all there. I didn't realize that all my teammates were in the dugout. They sprinted over from right field from the bullpens, and they wouldn't let me go in the clubhouse. They grabbed me, threw me back out on the field because this crowd was giving me a standing ovation. That's the other thing. The crowd had no idea what they were giving a standing ovation for. They just thought they were giving me a standing ovation for a walk-off home run. They had no idea they were literally sending me home with was the greatest moment in my baseball life. I was very lucky to experience that. I don't know what to say other than it. Even saying it now doesn't feel real. And I'm extremely appreciative because, listen, I would have much rather made the money and spent the time in the big leagues, which I honestly think I should have had the opportunity to do. But if this is what I get, it could be worse.
Yeah.
Could be a lot worse.
And because of that, like you kind of made this, I don't want to say like a personality because it's the truth, but like you were in the minors forever. That was your thing. And so for you to kind of exit this way, do you think about the other scenarios of how it could have ended, or is this the perfect way to end it?
I had offers to come back to play baseball. It ended exactly how it was supposed to end. And I never want to play professional baseball ever again.
I love that. And before we switch to the media stuff, you mentioned the front office being overly honest. Is that something that you weren't used to previously?
You work in this game. You know that answer.
And I've heard that a lot about the Diamondbacks front office.
Diamondbacks. So here's the full disclosure of it. I played with a lot of those guys over at the Red Sox when I was there for a very short time. I signed with the Royals. They traded me 2 weeks into the season to the Rockies. The Rockies didn't tell me at the time, but they were just renting me. They rented me because Daniel Descalso was hurt and they had prospects at AAA that they didn't want to call up. So they thought if somebody else goes down, we don't want to start any of their clock. Let's grab this guy who's available. And if somebody goes down, we'll call Cody up. Daniel Descalso gets healthy. I am no longer in possession of a job. It was a very dirty and ugly way to do business, and I was not happy about it. And I do not like how the Rockies conducted themselves in that matter. It was very ugly and shady, and it left me out of a job for no reason other than they just could do that. That is the majority of front offices in baseball. You are a product to be sold and used as much as humanly possible. You are not a person to that organization for most organizations. When I got to the Red Sox, when I signed with them, I was not in a good place, probably mentally. I was, clearly my job's always on the line. That organization just used me like I was nothing and threw me away. And I got to the Red Sox and I am stuck in AA. I hadn't been in AA at this point in 8 years, and I'm nearly 30, and I'm having to deal with a AA squad. And it wasn't just me. It was funny because on my team was an ex-teammate of mine, Nate Fryman, who was dealing with the exact same thing. Over there across town was Ryan Lavarnway dealing with the exact same thing. So we at least had each other in the league, and me and Nate on the same team. It was just one of those weird things that I feel like I knew I wasn't myself. And the Red Sox were so great to me the entire time. And I went into my manager's office. I'm like, I think I need to talk to somebody. He's like, what? He's like, I think I wouldn't blame you guys for wanting to fire me. He's like, what? Because I just thought I was playing bad. And he's like, we're not firing you. We love you. I'm like, what? He's like, and then it came to the point where a front office guy showed up the next week and called me in the office like, Cody, you are not going anywhere. In fact, would you like to sign back here next year? We'd like to have you back. One of my biggest career regrets is not re-signing with the Red Sox. I got talked out of it by somebody else to go to the Brewers, which probably shouldn't have done. Should have gone back to the Red Sox with a group of people that I thought were really honest and straightforward and good to me. Come to that opportunity when the Diamondbacks, that entire front office, Mike Hazen goes over to the Red Sox, brings everybody with them over to the Diamondbacks, and I just wanted to play there. And I called them. They called me back, said, let's do it. They called me before my first season was up with them and said, would you be interested in doing the same thing? And I said, with you guys, yes, because I trusted them. And I'm thrilled with the success that they've had over these last couple of years, because nobody in baseball deserves it more. The best people in baseball are with the Diamondbacks and Dave Roberts. Those are the best people in baseball. And I'll throw Mark Kotze on that list too.
Of course. You know your crowd here.
But you know how much I love me some Mark Kotze. I'm a huge Mark Kotze fan. Like those are the Diamondbacks, Mark Kotze, Dave Roberts, the three-headed monster of the nicest grouping of people.
And they're the best of friends too, Dave Roberts and Mark Kotze. Yeah.
And I'm assuming the Diamondbacks too.
Yeah, totally. And no, they just had, because the Dodgers were in town, and Kotz and Dave they had like a Napa wine outing with the one and only Trevor Hoffman. That's a fun little trio of people to be drinking wine in Napa.
So many great Trevor Hoffman stories. One of my favorite human beings who ever existed.
Yeah. So and that's what's cool too, is like with all the years you've been in the minors, I feel like there's certain relationships you gain in the minors that you can't replicate this happens. Like a lot of times their ETA gets pushed a little bit further. You mentioned prospects, these things happen, but I feel like the grind of the minor leagues, I'm thankful for it. And you can see that in the players too. And it's just, I don't know, a relationship that you can never duplicate if you were to rush through the process.
It's a different thing. It's a different process. The people that survive the minor leagues, it's a different, when I say survive the minor leagues, it's not the players it's not the Mike Trouts of the world. Like Mike Trout never needed to survive the minor leagues. Mike Trout was going to be in the big leagues no matter what. Oh,
he's so brave. Brave.
Also happens to be that Mike Trout is maybe one of the top 5 to ever pick up a bat and glove. I'm also that on top of that.
Yeah.
But it's, there are people that are anointed no matter what. If you draft in the first 3 rounds, you not getting the big leagues is actually a you problem.
Yeah.
Because the organizations can do everything they can to justify that financial investment to get you up there. There was none in me. And I knew that out the gate. And I think there were times where I forgot that it is a business, and I wanted to be treated like a person. And I was somehow a jerk for wanting such treatment.
How dare you?
Yeah, but hey, man, here we are now. And now I have a microphone and I'm louder than all of them.
I was going to ask about that. Well, we'll talk about the show here in a second, but when it comes to that and knowing that, you have a microphone now, but you've always been outspoken. So has that just gone up a notch now that you don't have a contract with a team, or what's your relationship with baseball now that you can talk about it more without really so much as like the consequences there?
I'd be lying if I said I was mincing a ton of words back then, because I wasn't. I thought baseball as a product was a broken product back then, and I wasn't quiet about it. I hated how minor leaguers were treated. I hated how the story of Major League Baseball was being told through the mouth of Major League Baseball for all those years. I really disliked it. I really disliked the industry and how it was being handled. I don't feel that way now. I feel as though Major League Baseball has turned a legitimately good corner. I don't think it's done. But I do think Major League Baseball has finally allowed themselves to not be the 1930s product that it was all the way up until about 5 years ago. The game just refused to grow, refused to change. And I kind of understand parts of that. I get it. The record books, Major League Baseball cares about their records so very much. So if you change certain things, what does that do to the record books? All of a sudden we're talking asterisks, and we're dealing with the same people yelling, well, Barry Bonds should have an asterisk. No, he shouldn't. I just simply don't know what to say other than the game's change, bodies change, the world changes. Eras change. I don't like how Barry Bonds is vilified for an entire era of baseball where everybody did the exact same thing, and somehow this guy's the bad guy. I'm sorry. I'm not on board with this, especially after we just got done with before the steroid era, a huge amphetamine era that everybody just wants to pretend didn't happen. Guys, baseball is not a clean game. It never was a clean game. Stop pretending it was a clean game. What I like about it now is we're starting to admit it. And honestly, the fact that we're admitting it is allowing us to finally grow as a game and sport.
And with that, with this new, the show with Beadle, who's great, by the way, what's that been like? Not just, we're talking about working with her, but what's it been like to kind of embrace, sports radio? People would always say sports radio is dying, and I don't see that. I do a lot with the A's Radio Network, but where do you see sports radio going?
honestly, I think of when people say sports radio is dying, I vehemently disagree because it's not. I do think radio is going through an issue, but I don't think sports radio is in that scenario. Sports radio, I think,
what separates those two?
Because I don't think sports radio has the competition that actual radio does. When you're talking about radio, top 100 radio, you have competition of the internet, you have competition of Apple Music, Spotify, you have competition of Sirius XM, you have competition of just your Apple iCloud and what you can even just do in that. YouTube's a competitor. Like, there are all those competitors. You do have those competitors in sports radio, but at the end of the day, local markets still matter in sports radio. Here in New York City, WFAN is still a very important thing. In Chicago, the Score 670 is a very important thing. Bay Area up there in San Francisco, same exact thing. Local media matters, and I think that national media matters as well. I'm on Mad Dog Sports Radio. We're a national channel. We get a lot of listeners. ESPN, they have their national media coverage. I think it's not necessarily dying. I do think it's evolving as far as the internet age continues to grow, and as our attention spans continue to deplete because of the TikTok world that we're currently in. So everything is being done in small bites. But those small bites allow you to kind of get to know somebody at least a little bit, to tune into said radio station, to where radio is long form, TV is short form, internet is shortest form. You can't hide on the radio. The radio, you have to be able to hold a person's attention for 3+ hours. And I love that because I love the sound of my own voice, and I love talking, and I love the fact that I get to talk to one of my best friends in Michelle Beadle on a daily basis. And I have been ungodly spoiled of who I've gotten to work with since I retired from playing. I came out to New York because Craig Carton brought me here. He brought me here to co-host a morning show on Fox Sports that, a guy with my resume as far as a playing career, why would I be 2 years out of minor league baseball co-hosting a nationally syndicated FS1 TV show? Doesn't even make sense to me, but that's the opportunity that I got. The opportunities I've gotten hosting a lot of shows like Live on the Line for Stadium, all the work I've done for MLB Network, and obviously my honest to God favorite job I've ever had now is doing this show with Michelle Beadle. Michelle is the easiest person to work with. She is a blast to work with, and we literally show up every day as a couple of knuckleheads that just talk about sports and then complain that we're talking about sports because I want to talk about Wolverine and Deadpool.
I get that. And you mentioned it's easy to work with her.
Yes.
What other characteristics does she possess that makes it easy to work with her?
She, let's see, punctual. She is wicked smart. I mean, I don't need to tell anybody the intelligence level of Michelle Beadle. She is the first one to make a smart ass comment to anything that I'm doing, wearing, or possessing. She is just ungodly easy to work with. She's funny as hell. She's smart as hell. No topic is off limits or taboo. It's, we're as interested in, and this is honestly, I think, why we work so well together, because we both love sports. I love sports. Sports has been our lives, but I'm not actually interested in sports. I'm interested in the peripheral around sports. I'm interested in everything that's adjacent to sports. I love talking the X's and O's in baseball, but did you see that 14-year-old kid get hit in the face by that foul ball? Right. That's more interesting to me. That's something that fascinates me. An adult that's going around a baseball field stealing home run balls from an 8-year-old. I'd rather make fun of that for 3 hours because that's insane, and that should be made fun of. It's just, we're very like-minded in a lot of ways, and we both just have fun talking about the peripheral along with the X's and O's. But I just love it because whenever I get moderately annoyed at the X's and O's, and I look to my right, she is visibly annoyed. I'm like, yes, because we're on the same page at all times, and it's just. We had a segment last week, and I'm not kidding. It might have been my favorite opening to a show we've ever done. We spent the first 14 minutes talking about the most nonsensical thing. We just had no interest in talking about what was on the first thing because it was a Dallas Cowboys story that wasn't a Dallas Cowboys story. So once it got to 17 minutes and we're 2 minutes from break, she was like, have we wasted enough time? Yes, we have. All right,
Yeah.
fine. We'll do what we have to do.
Mhm.
Dak Prescott has not gotten his deal yet. Does anyone care? Nobody. All right, we're going to break. And that was how we started the whole segment. And that's what we did. We formed it in a way that we didn't want to talk about it because we legitimately didn't want to talk about it. And that actually sparked a lot of callers that was like, tell us why this is important. And a bunch of people would call and tell us why it's important or tell us why it wasn't important. And that ended up becoming more fun than that topic ever deserved to be.
Well, and how do you and that's good to find the balance, right? Because you still have to, like, the news is out there. You have to stick to the news in a certain aspect because there's a storyline. But was it easy for you guys to, I don't want to say spin it, but to enhance it and make it more entertaining? And then you're bringing other people into it. So you're giving them an open forum as well.
I think it's a combination of, like, this is one thing the advice I gave somebody fairly recently, because it was good advice I was given. If you're having fun, the audience will have fun. Right. And it needs to be real and genuine. You can't fake it because they will feel that as well. We just had fun talking about something. We had fun making fun of something. We have a legitimately good time kind of just shooting the breeze back and forth about these topics that are either important or at times not important at all. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we have the opportunity to bring people in to our way of kind of talking about sports is, for lack of a better word, kind of just like a weird blessing that we just kind of have at our hands at all times. I just think it's sports talk you can get anywhere. Mm-hmm. People that are genuinely enjoy being in the room together and making it a part of a conversation where it's legitimately just three friends at a bar actually talking about sports. Also, one of them happened to play a sport professionally, so the X's and O's are very well covered. Also, Michelle's a basketball savant, so she knows those X's and O's in a way, and we're both just massive football fans. It turns into a sports show that we just both love doing.
And, you guys stopped by the Adam Carolla show recently, and it was a really interesting dynamic because Adam was talking to Michelle about, being female representation. And it's a question you can't answer, right? And so being able to listen to her talk about it, because as a woman in sports myself, it doesn't matter what we're doing, I'm getting asked, what's it like being women in sports? So when those questions arise and you're sitting next to her, what have you learned from her in those subjects when she gets asked about that?
Her honesty about it, and how just completely unafraid that she is at answering the question and being as honest and direct about it. Like she'll just go, oh yeah, it's BS, this, and she'll give you the bullet points on why they are. And she is just, there is not an ounce of fear in Michelle Beadle. She will tell you exactly what she thinks. And, hearing her talk about it and describe it is at times frustrating, but ultimately eye-opening, because the fact that there's any person in the world that's ever questioned Michelle Beadle is insane to me, because she is one of the brightest sports people I've ever known. She's one of the brightest sports minds I've ever come across. And literally just one of the most genuinely fun people to talk to I've ever come across. So to hear her, talking about the frustrations of it just really opens your eyes, going like, if Michelle Beadle deals with this, then what do other women in this industry deal with? Because Michelle Beadle shouldn't have to deal with a damn thing, yet she still does. And it's mind-boggling to me and eye-opening. And what I think is important for me, and what I would definitely suggest to all other dudes that are sitting in the room, maybe just shut up and listen.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Somebody as established as her still getting questioned. Like, the credentials are there. There's proof that she deserves to be there, but people are still like asking her, like, why do you deserve to be here, in a way, without directly asking her,
which is just nuts. I mean, like, look, why can't we just all look around and look at sports? Look at every show on ESPN or FS1. How many people played a sport at any point? I'll wait.
I look at my press box in that exact question.
Like, you don't need to have played the sport to be able to talk about the sport. You just don't. How do I know that? Because ESPN and FS1 is filled with people who never picked up a ball in their lives. Any ball. Like, it's just insane that we still deal with this, yet the people that are saying it are people that never picked up the same ball. It's alien to me, and it just, no one's ever been able to adequately explain it to me why they see it this way, other than, well, but we're men. Okay.
Congratulations.
I'm a man and I'm an idiot. So, and I'm one of the smarter dudes that I know. So I don't feel good about this one.
When you got into sports radio, what surprised you about it? Because, you did TV, you did all of that, you made appearances, but to have a 3-hour show, what surprised you about being able to have a microphone in front of your face for that long?
Not a whole lot, because at this point I'd already worked in radio for, I mentioned in high school I was on Mark and Brian all the time in KLOS, which at the time was a huge show in LA. And then I worked on Mark in the Morning, which was a big show in LA too. And I kind of gotten to know radio, and I was kind of always a big radio dog and fiend as a kid. I grew up in LA at a time when radio was absurd. Like the talent that was out there, like on KLOS, we had Mark and Brian. On KLSX, we had Howard Stern. On K-Rock, we had Kevin and Bean. We had Big Boy on Power 106. We had Rick Dees on Kiss FM. We had Jeremy London over on this thing. It was just like, it was Radio Hall of Famer after Radio Hall of Famer killers on every single network. And Howard Stern, who was just the king of them all. Like, it was just absurd time to grow up as a radio fan. And obviously getting to know, and I had the opportunity to work with Craig Carton on WFAN a bunch of times before I came over and worked with him on Fox. I got to have my own show on 670 The Score in Chicago for a couple of years. I worked afternoons in 670 The Score in Chicago while living in LA during during COVID. In fact, I was hosting 4 days a week for 3 to 4 hours over there. I've had my BetQL shows for 4 hours at a time for the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, daily radio to me is not a difficult thing. It's just what's difficult is finding the right concoction and cocktail to put together of people to work with, because I don't need to tell you, Jess, it's not even necessarily that people are bad people. It's just sometimes it could be the wrong setup, the wrong person, the wrong producer. Not that that producer's bad. It just might not be the producer that's right for you, that doesn't see it the same way as you. You might have a producer that's just so by the book, but you're not a by the book person. And they're just, things can clash. I think it's just a combination of, let's not lie about it. It's luck.
Yeah.
It's a lot of luck. If you happen to you find yourself in a position that you're on one of these shows and it happens to be magic that you're surrounded by people that think the same way as you or think differently, that does truly help improve you. And I do think I have a very good combination of that over at SiriusXM at Mad Dog. I am a very lucky dude, to say the least.
Oh, I'm right there with you. Yeah. Producers are important. You hear that, Philip? You hear that?
Philip, that's right, Philip. Get better.
Get better. His poor little arm in a sling. Last couple before I let you go, you mentioned you got minor league managerial opportunities or offers. You see it, Aaron Boone went to media before he went back and all of that, JJ Redick. Is that off the table for you?
No, but I'm not looking. How about that?
Why is it not off the table for you? Is there an itch that you need to scratch? Is there something you miss about that?
I do miss parts. There are things I absolutely miss. Like I don't miss playing. I missed preparing for the games, and I missed doing deep dives. I love numbers. I truly love baseball numbers. I love figuring out ways to break down numbers. I truly do. I don't know why I like that. It's a weird thing to like. I always wanted as a kid to be a manager. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a big league manager. I remember one time when actually asked Mark Kotze about this. One time I got screamed at by Bud Black. And I mean, Bud Black verbally took a hatchet to me and just beat me over the head with, oh no, he was right. He was right. You can ask Kotze about it. He was definitely right. Bud Black felt like I was questioning him, of which I kind of was, but I didn't see it that way at the time. So Bud Black took a hatchet to me for what felt like 30 minutes of just being yelled at. Kotze was in the poor Kotze.
How did Kotze react?
What? Ask him, because The story was something happened in a minor league, not a minor league, in a spring training game that a bunch of us were upset about. A player was playing, and after he did something, and it just rubbed us the wrong way. And I
asked Kotz when there are no, like, off the record, there's no mics around question, right?
You could ask him. I don't think it'll be interesting coming from Kotz with a microphone on, so I'll just tell you the story. Because I don't care. What do we do? Kotz. So I'm out at a place called the Moon Saloon at night at spring training, because at spring training the Padre Bar was at the time a place called the Moon Saloon during spring training. So I was there, and I was there with Balsley, our pitching coach, who I was there with him every single night. And Kotz comes in, and we're chatting, and Kotz. I looked at Kotz, and then I mentioned it to Kotz that I was annoyed by this thing, and Kotz was like, "Good." He was like very happy about it. He's like, good. Somebody needs to care. I love that. And he's like, tell me more. And I gave him some details, and we're talking about it. He's like, that's a leader. We need leaders here. Like, let's go.
I love that, man. Oh.
And I'm just like, and me and Kotz were friends, and I just dug Kotz. He was a good hitting coach. He was just a good dude. And then Kotz the next morning comes up to me, pats me on the back. He's like, hey, told Buddy what you said, man. Great job. Like, I told Buddy he wants to chat with you about it. Look, we're gonna go in there. We're gonna talk to him. I'm like, what? Why would you tell Buddy about it? Like, well, okay, I guess. And I go into the office, and Bud Black. I sit down, and Bud Black goes like, Decker, how old are you? And I just went like, and I looked over at Kotz, and Kotz is sitting there smiling, because Kotz legitimately thinks I'm about to get a reward.
Excited to, like, help you out. Yeah,
he thought I was getting a reward, baby. Yeah. He was so fired up for me. Please ask him about this.
I will.
I hope he's not mortified, because to me, this is the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. And then Kotz is like smiling. He's like, yeah, this is great. This is awesome. And Bud just, I'm 27, buddy, because I know where this is about to go.
You know where it's going to go.
And he just goes to town, and he is, there's nothing I can say. I'm just sitting there dead right. I look over at Kotz, and Kotz looks like a deer in headlights. Like, oh no, I accidentally threw my guy under the bus. And Buddy tore me to shreds, and then asked me a question that I answered very immediately in a way that he knew he didn't really have anywhere to go. So Bud Black started yelling at somebody else, and I'm just like, oh no, this is so bad. And then Kotz came up to me later. He's like, I am so sorry. I'm like, Kotz, don't worry about it. This is amazing. Bud Black, by the way, is awesome. I love Bud Black. I've never been quiet about my love for Bud Black. It's just, I love that this happened, because it's one of my favorite things that ever happened. And it was a good learning moment for me. I was a 27-year-old kid. What am I doing saying a damn word about what the organization's doing? I'm trying to get a roster spot for a team that at that point I still hadn't been in the big leagues for.
Yeah.
But then again, it was also an organization that I asked for my release from about a dozen times, and they constantly said no.
Mm. That's interesting. Last one before I let you go. Field of Dreams, not a
awful
fan.
Movie. Awful.
Why?
Have you seen it?
I like it. I mean,
why?
Because it's like romantic and wonderful, and I love Ray Liotta.
I love Ray Liotta too.
And
he could have hit left-handed. Kevin Costner, bad actor. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, Cody!
It's time for us all to finally admit the truth. Kevin Costner is a perfectly minimally talented actor, in my opinion. He was great as Crash Davis. He was actually, I'll go as far to say, he was phenomenal as Crash Davis.
Do you think that was his best role?
Yes, by far.
Oh my God.
And I'll say his second best role was Dancing with Wolves, of which he directed, and I thought he did a very fine job as a director and star of that film. Outside of that, I've disliked almost everything Kevin Costner's ever touched. And Field of Dreams is very much at the top of the list. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
And I hope this puts it in perspective on just my hatred of this film.
Okay.
If there was a sequel made, the only sequel that can be made that would make sense is a murder trial of Kevin Costner's character, because how exactly is he going to explain that the man that he kidnapped, James Earl Jones, disappeared also in a cornfield with ghosts? By all means, all I want to see is the courtroom drama of him actually saying this to a judge and him being put in prison for 100 years.
That's
also,
true.
Why does everyone ignore the fact that he did kidnap James Earl Jones in the movie? That's a crime.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And because if it's based on a true story, then why aren't we talking about the fact that, like, the voice of Star Wars is gone?
These are all concerning aspects to me.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Also, at the end of the movie, I mean, and also the end of the movie was to play catch with your dad. I played catch with my dad one time. It was awful.
That part gets me every time. Like that part does make me cry. But what is your favorite baseball movie then?
The Natural. And how about this? The things that you find romantic about Field of Dreams is what I find romantic about The Natural. I think that
I've
was
actually never seen The Natural.
And that's when I found out that me and Jess were no longer friends. What?
That's what did it, Cody?
I've never seen The Natural.
I don't know.
Robert Redford.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like
we're talking Robert Redford. We're talking Glenn Close, Robert Duvall, Barry Levinson's best directing work. Almost the entire movie shot in magic hour, which is an impossible thing to do before the creation of CGI. Just truly a magic movie.
What's magic hour?
Magic hour is a short 15-minute period of time every single day where the sun sets in a certain way that flares the lens to be gold. So it's called magic hour. And you can only use that time.
So 15-minute
you have like a 15-minute window to get that shot if you're doing it naturally. And there are so many magic hour shots and scenes in that movie. It is beautiful.
Well, my favorite baseball movie, unfortunately, is the Kevin Costner movie.
Bull Durham, great movie. Love it.
No. For love of the game.
All right, how about this? He was not bad in that movie either.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it.
He was not bad in that movie. Listen, he's a perfectly okay actor, in my opinion. Honestly, I find him to be a better director. I
feel like he would appreciate you calling him a perfectly okay actor.
He probably wouldn't. He'd probably be mad and like try to sue me or something. I don't know. Did you see American Saga? Oh. I
feel like he's got a lot going on right now. But
yes, he does. Yes, he does. And I don't know. Do I wish him well? I don't know. I don't know what's actually happening.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like if you were to tell me he was a perfectly okay actor, that's not the worst thing that he's dealt with today.
He's perfectly fine. I think he's a better director than actor. And that's, by the way, I'll go as far as say I think he's a good director.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a compliment.
I just don't want to see him acting. Did you see Draft Day? Oh.
It's been a long time, but yeah.
That was such a bad movie.
But, and I will say, like, if I'm not the type of person to be like, oh, it's a Kevin Costner movie, I've got to see it. Like, Meryl Streep always will stop what I'm doing to watch a Meryl Streep movie, but Kevin Costner doesn't really do that.
No. There's only a couple actors that do that for me.
Yeah.
Stanley Tucci.
Oh, okay, yes. Oh, yes.
I'll see anything with Stanley Tucci.
So you and I love us some Devil Wears Prada.
Come on, any time. Devil Wears Prada, I'm watching that.
Yeah.
Twice.
And he's got a great TikTok too. Like he'll make like great.
No, God, that guy, he's a cook now. Like
he's a cook and like everybody loves him. You know what I mean? Like it's just, you can't ever hate it. That's a good call.
Trust me, I started shaving my head about 6 months ago. Stanley Tucci is very much part of the reason where I felt comfortable finally taking the plunge.
Yeah. I mean, there you go. That's one person to
hero.
Mine would be like, I don't really have anybody. Maybe Mark Kotze.
Mark Kotze is and always has been my hero.
I forgot how all of his hair because I'm so adjusted to his look now. And I would look at old, because they show so many clips of him on the A's and it's like, oh my gosh, like, but he's also in fantastic shape too. He sat in for a Mason Miller bullpen recently.
Not surprising. That's the least surprising thing. Mark Kotze deserves a statue in stadiums he didn't even play in. That's how much I love Mark Kotze.
I love that. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
We should dedicate this episode to Mark Kotze.
Honestly, edit everything out except for the Mark Kotze stuff. Because honestly, this should just be a Mark Kotze show.
I can't wait to talk to him about your stories too.
Please. I know he'll remember it. I wonder if he remembers it the same way I do.
Yeah, and you never know with him because he's definitely sees the positives like a lot, so maybe he won't realize like how
he might respond to you like, nope, Deck got exactly what he deserved. He was shooting his mouth, and I set him up. And if he did do that, I'll say, good job, got my ass.
Got it, Cody. This is awesome. Thanks for stopping by.
No, thanks for having me.
That was Cody Decker of Beadle and Decker on Mad Dog Sports Radio on Sirius XM. A little bit of everything, right? Is the door still open for him to possibly coach in the future or be a minor league manager? It's happened before. JJ Redick did it. Aaron Boone, of course. So it'll be interesting to see what he decides. But for now, I think he's really happy with his commitment to sports media. Put a microphone in front of him and magic does happen. Make sure you listen to the Beadle and Decker show on Mad Dog Sports Radio on Sirius XM. And thank you for tuning in to Short and to the Point here on Awful Announcing and the Comeback. For Philip, this is Jessica Kleinschmidt, and we'll see you next time.
Want even more short and to the point? Follow Jessica at KleinschmidtJD and head over to thecomeback.com and awfulannouncing.com.